don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. It was a warm, sunny afternoon in the middle of spring, the kind of day where the world seems to be waking up from a long sleep. The trees outside the classroom window swayed gently in the breeze, and birds sang songs that echoed through the air. I was sitting in my usual spot by the window, looking outside, but not really seeing anything. My mind was elsewhere, lost in a sea of thoughts and worries, like it often was. Then, something caught my eye. Across the room, near the door, a new student entered. She walked in with the kind of quiet confidence that made her stand out, even without saying a word. Her name was Emma, and she had just moved to our town. As she stepped in, everyone turned to look at her, but I don't think anyone noticed me. I didn't really care. I wasn't the type to attract attention. I was shy, quiet, and always felt a bit out of place. Emma had long, brown hair that shimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes were a deep green, like the color of the forest after a heavy rain. She smiled softly as she greeted the class, and her smile felt warm, almost as if she already knew everyone. But there was something different about her, something in the way she stood. She was different from everyone else, and that made me curious. The teacher introduced her, but I didn't catch much of what was said. My mind was focused on Emma. I couldn't understand why I felt this sudden rush of emotions, like my heart was beating faster than usual. It was strange because I had never felt this way about anyone before. It wasn't just her appearance. It was the way she carried herself, so effortlessly. She was kind and calm, yet there was a spark in her eyes that seemed to say, "I know something you don't." The rest of the class passed by in a blur. I tried to focus on the lesson, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. I caught myself stealing glances at her from time to time, wondering if she had noticed me. I didn't want to stare, but I couldn't help it. Every time I looked at her, there was something new to discover, something that made my heart skip a beat. After class, I was walking down the hall when I heard a soft voice behind me. "Hey, do you know where the library is?" I turned around quickly, my face turning red as I saw Emma standing there, looking at me with those green eyes. She smiled again, and I felt my stomach twist in knots. "Ah, yeah, it's just down the hall," I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me, shaky and unsure. "Thanks," she replied, still smiling. "I'm still trying to figure out this school." I nodded, feeling awkward. "I can show you," I offered. It was strange. I wasn't usually the one to offer help, but something about her made me want to be near her, even if it was just for a moment. We walked together, and as we talked, I began to feel a strange connection. It wasn't just about the words we exchanged. It was the way she listened. She seemed to understand what I was saying without judgment, and that made me feel safe in a way I hadn't experienced before. The world around us seemed to fade away as we walked side by side, our footsteps echoing in the quiet hallways. When we reached the library, she turned to me and said, "Thanks again. You're really nice." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. It's no problem. We exchanged a few more words before she disappeared into the library. And I stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I couldn't stop thinking about her. There was something magical about her, like she had come into my life for a reason. But I didn't know what that reason was yet. Over the next few days, I found myself looking for reasons to see Emma. I would take the long way to class just to pass by her locker, hoping for another chance to talk. Sometimes, I'd sit by the window, pretending to study, but in reality, I was waiting for her to walk by. When she did, I'd feel a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. Every time our eyes met, it felt like something unspoken passed between us. It wasn't love, at least. I didn't think it was, but it was something new, something different, something I wasn't sure how to handle. One afternoon, as I sat by my usual spot in the cafeteria, I saw her again. This time, she was sitting at a table with a few other people, laughing and talking. Her laugh was soft but bright, and it made my heart race every time I heard it. I wanted to go over and say something, but the thought of approaching her made me nervous. What if I said something stupid? What if she didn't want to talk to me? But just as I was about to turn away, I saw her look in my direction. For a brief moment, our eyes locked, and my heart skipped a beat. Then, she smiled. One of those genuine smiles that made everything else disappear. Without thinking, I stood up and walked over to her table. "Hey, Emma," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, her eyes lighting up as she smiled. "Hey, I didn't expect to see you here." I sat down across from her, trying to calm my racing heart. "Yeah, I usually sit by the window, but today I thought I'd try something different." We started talking, and it felt easy, like we had known each other forever. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Emma was different, but in a way that made me feel more like myself. The deepening connection, as the days passed, I found myself thinking about Emma more and more. Every time I saw her, it felt like the world around us faded away. It was as if we were the only two people in the room, and nothing else mattered. We started spending more time together, often talking after class, hanging out in the library, or just walking through the school halls. We became close, but I still didn't know how to describe what I felt. It wasn't just friendship, but it wasn't love either. It was something new, something uncertain. One afternoon, after school, Emma invited me to come with her to a nearby cafe. I was nervous but excited at the thought of spending time with her outside of school. We found a quiet corner in the cafe, away from the noise and bustle, and started talking about everything and nothing. She shared stories about her old town, her family, and her hopes for the future. And for the first time, I opened up to her too, sharing things I hadn't told anyone before. As we talked, I realized how easy it was to be with her. There was no pressure, no cuernis. It felt like we had known each other for years. I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time, and I could tell she was enjoying herself too. There was something comforting about being with her, something that made the world feel less complicated. But as much as I enjoyed our time together, there was always a small part of me that was unsure. I couldn't understand why she would choose to spend time with someone like me. I wasn't popular or outgoing, and I definitely wasn't the type of person who usually got the attention of someone like her. But whenever I started to doubt myself, she would say something that made everything feel okay again. It was like she could read my mind, knowing exactly what I was thinking. Her kindness and understanding were enough to silence my insecurities, even if just for a while. One day, we were walking home from school when it happened. I had been waiting for the perfect moment, but it never seemed to come. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the tension building between us. I didn't want to say anything too soon, but I couldn't keep it in any longer. Emma, I started, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know how to say this, but I think I'm starting to like you. More than just a friend. I looked at her, unsure of what her reaction would be. Would she think I was weird? Would she reject me? But instead of saying anything right away, she simply smiled. It was that same soft, warm smile that always made my heart race. I'm glad you said that, she replied gently, her voice soft but sincere. Because I feel the same way. My heart skipped a beat as I processed what she had just said. She liked me too? It didn't make sense. How could someone as kind and beautiful as Emma like someone like me? But there it was, in her words and the way she looked at me. It felt real. From that moment on, everything between us changed. We were no longer just friends. We were something more. But what exactly that meant, I wasn't sure. It was new, and it was exciting, but it was also a little scary. I had never been in a relationship before, and I didn't know what to expect. But with Emma, everything felt natural, like we were meant to be together. We spent more time together, going to the park, watching movies, and talking late into the night. There were moments of silence where we didn't need to speak, and those moments felt just as meaningful as the conversations we had. It was as if we didn't need words to understand each other. We could just be, and that was enough. But as time went on, I started to notice the little things. Sometimes, Emma seemed distant, her smile not quite as bright as it used to be. She would stare off into the distance, lost in her thoughts. I didn't know what was going on, but it made me feel uneasy. Was she having second thoughts about us? Was I not enough? One afternoon, we were sitting on a bench in the park, and I noticed that she seemed a little quieter than usual. I reached out and gently touched her hand. Hey, I said softly, is everything okay? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, she sighed and leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been feeling a little lost lately. Like, I'm not sure about some things in my life. I don't want to hurt you, but I don't want to keep pretending that everything is perfect. Her words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Was she ending things? I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. But as I looked at her, I realized something. She wasn't pushing me away. She was being honest, something I admired and respected. It's okay, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. We don't have to figure everything out right now. I just want you to know that I care about you. And I'm here, no matter what. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine for something comfort, reassurance, maybe both. And in that moment, I realized that first love wasn't about perfection. It was about growing together, learning from each other, and facing the uncertain future hand in hand. The unspoken truth. Days turned into weeks, and as time passed, Emma and I continued to navigate the growing complexities of our relationship. We weren't perfect, but we learned to communicate in a way that allowed us to grow, both as individuals and as a couple. There were moments of uncertainty, of course, especially when things felt awkward or distant. But the foundation we had built, based on trust, understanding, and mutual respect, kept us grounded. Emma was still struggling with the weight of everything in her life. She would often speak about her past, her family, and the things she was unsure about. I could tell that she was carrying a lot on her shoulders, but I also saw the strength within her, the quiet resilience that made her who she was. I admired that about her, even when it seemed like she was struggling to keep it all together. I, too, was learning things about myself that I hadn't known before. Before meeting Emma, I had always been someone who kept my feelings bottled up, afraid to share too much in case I was judged or misunderstood. But with her, I felt safe. I felt like I could open up, express my fears, my hopes, my dreams. I felt like I could be my true self without fear of rejection. Yet, despite everything, there was one truth that lingered between us. Unspoken, but always there, the uncertainty of the future. We both knew that things couldn't stay the same forever. Our lives were moving in different directions. And deep down, we both understood that the time we had together might be limited. One evening, as we sat on the same park bench where we had shared our first quiet conversation about our feelings, I noticed that Emma seemed different. Her eyes were distant, her mind elsewhere. I could see the tension in her shoulders and the way she nervously fiddled with the hem of her sweater. Emma? I asked gently, my voice laced with concern. What's going on? She took a deep breath and looked at me, her gaze heavy with unspoken emotions. I've been thinking a lot. She began slowly. About us. About everything. I felt a lump form in my throat. What about us? I asked, though I already had an inkling of what she might say. She paused, her fingers playing with the sleeve of her sweater. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered, "but I think I need to figure things out on my own. I don't want to be selfish, but I'm not sure I can be the person you need right now. I'm just not ready." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had seen this coming, hadn't I? But hearing her say it aloud made it so much more real, so much more painful. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but the tears threatened to spill. "I understand," I said, though it was the hardest thing I had ever said. "You don't have to explain. I just want you to be happy." "Emma." She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret. "I wish things were different," she said softly. "But sometimes we have to let go, even when we don't want to. I care about you so much, but I think we both need to find our own way." We sat there for a while, not speaking, just being. The silence between us was filled with 1,000 unspoken words, words that neither of us could find the courage to say. In that moment, I realized that first love was not always about staying together forever. Sometimes it was about learning and growing, about understanding that even the most beautiful connections could be temporary. When we finally stood up to leave, Emma turned to me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. Thank you." I replied, my voice barely audible. "You've changed my life, Emma. I'll always be grateful for that." And with one last, lingering glance, we parted ways. Epilogue. A new beginning. Months passed, and life moved on. I focused on my studies, spending time with my friends, and discovering new things about myself. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I found myself missing Emma, wishing things had turned out differently. But as I grew, I realized that our time together wasn't wasted. It had shaped me, taught me things about love, about vulnerability, and about letting go. Emma, too, moved forward. We didn't speak much after that day in the park, but I knew she was doing what she needed to do. I saw her from time to time around school, and when our eyes met, there was no sadness, only a quiet understanding. We had shared something real, something meaningful, and that would always stay with us. First love is like that, beautiful, intense, and full of lessons. It's not always easy, and it doesn't always last, but it shapes who we are and helps us understand what we need in the future. And for me, the love I shared with Emma was something I would carry with me forever, even if our paths never crossed again. Reflections and realizations. In the months following that quiet farewell in the park, I found myself reflecting often on what had happened between Emma and me. It wasn't just the end of a relationship, but the beginning of something else. A deeper understanding of myself, of love, and of the complexities of human connection. At first, I thought the pain of losing her would never fade. I thought the memories would stay with me, haunting me, reminding me of what we had and what we lost. But slowly, day by day, the ache in my heart began to soften. It wasn't that I forgot about Emma or erased the memories we had shared. It was more like I was learning to carry them with me as part of who I was now. I realized that first love wasn't meant to last forever for everyone. It wasn't about finding the one right away. Sometimes, it was about discovering parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. For me, my time with Emma taught me vulnerability, the courage to open my heart and let someone else in. Before her, I had kept my emotions locked away, afraid of getting hurt. But with her, I learned that love is not about protecting yourself at all costs. It's about trusting someone enough to be real, to be honest, even if there's the possibility of heartbreak. It was also in those quiet moments of self reflection that I realized how much I had grown. Emma had shown me the value of empathy, the ability to listen without judgment, to care without expectation. I remembered the way she listened when I shared my insecurities or my dreams. She never criticized, never belittled me. She simply understood, and in doing so, she gave me a gift, the gift of truly being seen, letting go. I had learned wasn't about forgetting the person or the love you shared. It was about accepting that people change, that life moves forward, and that sometimes relationships don't turn out the way you hoped. It was about recognizing that love, even though it might end, doesn't diminish in value. It was something that had taught me, shaped me, and prepared me for the future. As time went on, I began to see Emma less as the girl I had loved and more as the person who had helped me become who I was meant to be. Our paths had diverged, and that was okay. Life had a way of bringing people in and out of our lives at exactly the right time. I knew that, just like our love, our friendship had served its purpose. And now, it was time for me to let go and embrace the next chapter of my life. I started to explore new interests, make new friends, and focus more on my own personal growth. I realized that being in a relationship, especially your first one, teaches you more about who you are than who the other person is. First love isn't just about the other person. It's about understanding your own needs, your own desires, and your own boundaries. It's about realizing that you are worthy of love and that you don't need someone else to complete you. You can complete yourself. Emma and I still occasionally ran into each other, and each time, it felt less awkward and more like a quiet acknowledgement of what we had shared. There were no hard feelings, no regrets, just a mutual respect for the other person's journey. Sometimes, she would smile at me across a crowded hallway, and I would smile back. It was a smile that said, I remember. I'll always remember. And that was enough. Our love, while short lived, had meant something, and that meaning would never fade. The lessons of first love, looking back, I could see now that first love wasn't just a fleeting experience. It was a teacher, guiding me through the challenges and complexities of emotional growth. Here are the lessons I learned, the ones that would stay with me forever. 1. Vulnerability is strength. Love taught me that opening my heart wasn't a weakness, but a strength. The courage to be vulnerable, to let someone in, was the key to finding deeper connections with others, not just romantically, but in all relationships. 2. Letting go is part of growing. One of the hardest lessons was understanding that not all relationships are meant to last. Letting go doesn't mean that the love wasn't real. It just means that we are evolving. And sometimes, love is meant to be a chapter, not the whole book. 3. Self-love is essential. First love taught me the importance of loving myself first. Before I could fully love someone else, I had to understand and accept myself. This love for myself gave me the strength to walk away when needed and to stand tall, knowing my worth. 4. Love changes us, no matter how long or short a relationship lasts. Love changes us. It helps us grow, teaches us about patience, compromise, and trust. Every relationship we experience, especially our first love, shapes us into the person we are meant to become. 5. It's okay to move on. First love doesn't have to be the end all. It doesn't define us, and it doesn't mean we can't find love again. Moving on is a part of life, and it's okay to open our hearts to new experiences, even after a painful goodbye. Conclusion: the end is just the beginning. First love is a journey, not a destination. It's a journey of self-discovery, of learning how to open your heart, and of realizing that love isn't just about being with someone else. It's about understanding who you are. The love I shared with Emma wasn't perfect, and it didn't last forever, but it taught me more than I could have ever imagined. And so, while our love story had come to an end, it was only the beginning of something bigger. It was the beginning of the person I was becoming, the person who would someday, hopefully, be ready for a love that would last. But until then, I carried the lessons of first love with me: vulnerability, growth, and the beautiful, bittersweet understanding that life is all about change. And no matter where the future took me, I would always remember the first love that changed me forever. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you like the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.